Hello everybody and welcome to this Derbyshire Planning Committee. Bit of housekeeping first, just to remind members, can you please keep your microphones off when you're not speaking, and only turn them on when you ask a question and you've raised your hands and I'll call you to speak. So other than that, we'll move straight into the agenda. Item 1 is apologies and substitutes. Jackie.
Oh, no apologies received, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. I move. Second.
Second, Chair.
All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's done. Right. Item 3, interests. Anybody declaring any interest in the meeting tonight? No?
Yeah, I haven't received any declarations of interest.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Thank you. So we'll move straight on to applications for determination. As you will all know, item 4.1, which is the Smedley Street application, has been withdrawn. So the first application is item 4.2, which is land to south of Hallmark Tractors, Sudbury. It's application number 20/00343. This is reserve matters. And I'll hand over to Chris, who's got to deal with the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall visiting this site some years ago now to assess an application for a new depot building, which was applied for in full, and then an outline component of that application, which was for residential developments of this particular site. This application is for approval of the matters that were reserved as part of that application. So members recall when we considered that application some years ago now, we only agreed the point of access into the site. So all of the matters were reserved for subsequent approval. So scale, appearance, the layout of the housing on site, and also the landscaping of the site. But also the access insofar as it relates to the estate roads and pedestrian routes through the site. It was only the point of access onto Oak Lane that was agreed as part of the original hybrid application. Now, before I move on to the presentation, I'd like to make members aware of the public participation and representation sheet that was circulated to you in advance of the meeting. There are 4 items to report on there. One is comments from the ward member. The other is a joined up response from both the lead local flood authority and also the highway authority, and you'll note the recommendation there to impose 4 additional conditions. So if members were minded to approve this application, it will be in accordance with the officer recommendation and with these additional conditions. We've also received comments from the applicant in support of the application, and we've also received comments from a local resident, James Bennett, and members should have had time to read those comments and look at the comments that officers are about to make in response to those. So moving on to the presentation. As the Chair has mentioned, the application is for approval of reserve matters for the erection of 4 houses on this particular site. The site is in open countryside. It's a small hamlet of properties at the junction of Oak Lane and the A515. The application site is shown on this particular plan. You see it just edged pink and hatched pink. To the north of the application site, members who've visited the site recently will note that a large depot building has been constructed on that site, and it now forms the location of where Hallmark Tractors operate from. The original petrol filling station and depot building is now redundant. There's a separate application to convert that building, but this application just concerns the outline element of that original hybrid application. So it is just the site edged pink on this particular drawing. Edged red on this drawing, and you get an appreciation of where neighbouring properties are located in relation to the application site. So we've got Coppice View immediately to the south. We've got a property called Springfield just beyond that to the east of that house. You've got a pair of semi-detached properties, Willow Cottage and Lodge Cottage, and then you've got another detached house, Bentfield House, just to the north of that pair. Now, the application is for 4 houses. We have 2 detached houses and then a further link attached houses. So 4 houses in total. You can see there the general arrangement of those houses on the site. So you've got a house that addresses Oak Lane here. You've got another house that sits on its own just immediately behind, and then you've got a pair of link attached houses just within the dog-legged part of the site. The original application proposed a 6-bedroom, a 5-bedroom and 2 4-bedroom properties, but the scale, you'll note from the officer's report, the scale of the houses has been reduced, and we're now just dealing with 4 4-bedroom detached houses on the site. Now, in elevation terms, you can see that they're fairly traditional design. You've got chimneys to both gable ends. You've got little gablet details on the frontage, oak framed or timber framed porch detail, some coin detailing and plinth. A plinth is shown to the bottom of the houses on the street scene perspective. So the top image, if you have a look at that, that's what you'd see from Oak Lane. I mean, obviously there's houses that sit in front of this development site, so you'd only see this this view if you're stood in the actual main site itself. So you've got 2 detached houses, then the link attached or link detached houses side on to Oak Lane, and then you've got a head-on view of the link detached or attached, however you want to describe it, houses at the bottom there. And you get a sense of the design. Red brick is indicated to the walls, plain tiles to the roof. You'll note there's a condition to agree materials should members be minded to approve this particular application. And then we've got detailed elevation drawings of the individual plots. So this is plot 1. You can see it's got a projecting 2-story gable at the rear. In terms of footprint and floor layout, you see 4 bedrooms here. I think each bedroom, so there's three en suites to those bedrooms. The plot 2, very similar design, very similar amount of accommodation. Again, 4 bedrooms to that property and a sort of dressing area as well. And then the link detached or attached houses. Again, you've got 4 bedrooms, and each house has a garage as well. So we've got details there, elevation details of the double garage and the single garage, which will serve the properties. Now, we've taken various views of this application site, and I'll just go through those with you now. So that's members will be familiar from passing this site. This is the former depot building, currently not in use. There's an application to change the use of that building. You can see here Springfield property next to that, and the pair of semi-detached properties on the right-hand side of that photograph. This is the view which shows the A515, and again you see the pair of houses just in the background and the detached house beyond that. Here you get a sense of the dogleg part of the application site and the view that you'd have of the rear of the pair of link attached houses within the dogleg, and just the relationship of those houses with existing residential development. Now you'll struggle, I'll take you back to an image in a moment, but you'll struggle to get a sense of the distance between the rear elevation of the houses and the boundary with those properties, but we're talking about a distance in excess of 16 meters. So it's a sufficient distance in officers' view for there not to be any resultant overbearing impacts or loss of privacy here. Very similar to sort of back-to-back housing you'd see in a normal residential area, and also reflect on the height of the buildings as well. The height of the houses within the dogleg part of the site are slightly lower than the plots 1 and 2, a little over 8 meters high to ridge. So then we've got a photo here. You can just make out on this photograph the gap between the depot building and existing residential development. You'll see the depot building just underneath the canopy of the tree there. And this is the image looking down Oak Lane. So you can see the existing access into the site. The access is broadly in the location of the approved access, which will serve the residential development. So the approved access into the site is off Oak Lane. And this is the view looking in the other direction. You can just see there, just behind this conifer hedge, that there is a garage under construction to the dwelling coppice view. This is a photograph looking into the body of the site. You see the depot building in the background. Again, you can just get a sense of the current state of the land. So it has been used as storage in part in the past. There's currently a skip on there and some low-level storage. You see some boundary trees and vegetation here. Now this is the view. This is the coppice view property, and you can see that it's bound currently by a fence, but also quite a high boundary hedge. And that just gives you a sense of the boundary treatment between the houses, the proposed houses, and that existing property. Just going back to the block plan for the site. So I'm just going to end the show and go back to an earlier image. I think that'll be helpful for members just to appreciate the proximity of some of the houses to existing residential properties. Okay. Just want to check with members. I'm just going to begin to share screen again. I just want to check with members that they can see what's on my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see that now. So you can see a line at the plot 3, just behind the rear 2-storey gable and the boundary of the application site. That measurement, which you can't make out on that plan, is 16.37 metres. So you can just get a sense of the distance between the rear elevation of these properties and existing residential development off the A515. Happy to take questions at this stage. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions.
Right, members. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris. I do remember the site very well. It did raise a complaint last time, I do recall. And so I'd like to refer in one of my points to comments from the nearby resident about lack of visit and so forth. So first of all, scale. Why aren't we building any affordable homes, type affordable homes as postulated? Can you remind me where we are with Section 106 contributions with 4 houses? I can't remember the planning law on it. Are they able to make a contribution? Have we got a contribution? I realise we're dealing with reserved matters, Chris, of course. So my final point, as I say, is the contribution by the resident nearby, and wonder what officers' views are on the situation we're in.
A number of questions there, Councillor, and I'll address them as they were presented to me. So some members have visited this site previously. Now, officers feel relatively confident that members can make a judgment on the amount of development and its impact on nearby properties in this case. The site is relatively flat. You can get a sense of the separation of the houses with existing residential properties, and we feel that the distances involved and the scale of the development is such that there are unlikely to be any overbearing or significant loss of privacy impacts that would warrant refusal on such grounds, and those issues don't require further examination in officers' opinion on site by members. The issue of affordable housing, government guidance is clear that in that we can only ask, and our own development plan policies are clear in that we can only ask for affordable housing contributions on developments involving more than 10 houses, or where the floor space of those properties is more than 1,000 square metres. Now, this application doesn't exceed those thresholds, and therefore we can't ask for an affordable housing contribution in this case. You'll remember the circumstances surrounding the granting of permission for the original application. And there were no requirements or no prescriptions or conditions on the original permission to require that there was a certain mix of housing on site, that they were to be for rural workers. The permission was just for up to four dwelling houses on site without restrictions. So they're open market houses potentially. Well, they are open market houses, and we can't really control the housing, the mix of housing and the size of housing on the site. So there isn't a condition that controls such sizes of houses.
Right, thank you. Councillor Archer.
I was going to ask about the comment by Councillor Allison about the need to requirement to create jobs and the houses ideally being for employees, but I think that's just been addressed in the last answer, so that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Burfield.
Thank you, Chair. It's been suggested in one of the representations that the application should be considered invalid because it's a departure from the outline permission given because of the loss of these mature trees and hedges. And that was a key point in granting the original permission. So where do we stand legally on that one, please? And the second question would be, the trees themselves and the hedges, were those photographs taken before these trees were taken away or after? Because I'm not really clear where these trees were.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Barefoot. I'm just addressing the first question about the landscaping of the site. Just to reiterate, landscaping of the part of the site or part of the development applied for in outline was reserved. So there was an indicative landscaping scheme submitted with the original hybrid application, and there was a condition on the full part which dealt with the new depot building, which required the landscaping of the site to be carried out generally in accordance with that drawing. Now we have, in looking at discharging conditions relating to that part of the application, we've looked at a scheme that is in general accordance with that plan. Now, landscaping for this part of the site, which was in outline with the landscaping reserved for subsequent approval, is not something that we were able to control. That's the matter for members or an assessment for members to make as part of consideration of this application. We have, you've seen from the block plan that we have got an indicative scheme of landscaping which shows retention of some of the trees and vegetation along the western boundary of the site, and it also proposes retention of existing vegetation on the eastern boundary with residential properties, and supplementary planting as well to mitigate the impacts of the development and also filter views of it from within and outside of the site. And you'll note as well there's a condition which seeks to agree all vegetation to be retained on site, all new planting, all new tree planting, and that will be controlled by condition and safeguarded for a period of time to ensure a satisfactory landscape setting for this development. In answer to your second question, some trees and vegetation were removed. However, some have been retained, but some of that vegetation has been removed in order to accommodate this particular development.
So if I could come back, Chair, are we able to see on the photographs that you took, Chris, where these trees were? Because I'm not really very clear where they were. And also, if I could just ask on the legal point, are we sure that we can't be legally challenged on this one about it being in an invalid application? Because the gentleman who wrote the email seemed to be convinced that that was the case, and I don't want us to end up with a legal challenge.
Okay, if I just come back on the first point, I've just shared my screen again with the photograph which shows, you see some existing vegetation on the western boundary of the site. Some of that vegetation has been cleared and thinned, if you like, on that boundary. But in the background, can you see the vegetation between the depot building and the application site? Vegetation in that area, I understand, has been cleared as well. And this photograph was taken on the 12th of May of this year. So it gives you a sense of what vegetation remains on site and the areas where there has been some clearance of vegetation. On the point of the legality of us issuing a decision, I mean, it may be better to direct that question to the council solicitor, but I'm confident because landscaping wasn't a matter which was reserved for subsequent approval, that's part of our assessment tonight to consider landscaping for this outline element of that original proposal. So I feel that any decision that's made and any agreement to the landscaping of this part of the site would be sound. Sorry, Kerry, I don't know if you want to come back on the legality of that.
Yeah, can I just come in there, Chair? And I'm
Yep.
just, I mean, I wasn't party when the outline permission was approved, but just upon reading the officer's report on this at 7:12, it does say that there was no condition on the hybrid planning permission for existing landscaping. So whilst it is regrettable that the vegetation and the trees have been removed, they weren't at liberty to retain them, and that, as Chris rightly says, that this is now being assessed now as part of the reserved matters application, and that just a landscaping matters for landscaping were to are to be addressed now, which they have been. So I'd be quite satisfied that that we can't have a legal challenge on this when it wasn't a legal requirement to maintain the landscaping as it was in the first place. Does that answer your question, Councillor Burfoot?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Well, thank you, Chair. Chris, like some of the others on the panel tonight, I have been on their side, but can you just remind me of the display, the side of the display onto Oak Lane? It's quite a busy lane, really.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Tom Donnelly. The display was controlled by condition on the original hybrid application. So based on the speed of the road, the Highway Authority requested a display of a particular distance in either direction. You'll note from the application site area, it includes a swathe of land, doesn't it, along the site frontage to achieve that display. But it was controlled by condition on that original hybrid application. I can tell you exactly what it is if you'd like to know, but it's a matter that's already been and gone, basically, in terms of the point of access onto Oak Lane.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Councillor Slack. Have to turn your microphone on, Councillor Slack. Councillor Slack? Has he disappeared or is he still here? Well, it doesn't appear on my screen, so I'll move to the next. That's Councillor Pawley.
Sorry, dropped finding my button. Councillor Burfoot has already asked the question I was going to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lee.
Sorry.
Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's nothing from highways that suggests there's any sort of means of a footpath onto the main A515 or anything, as like Councillor Donnelly says, it's quite a busy little lane that is, and there's no means of access to the main highway, if you like, because I take it the front part of the site now has been taken off or away from it, so there's no means to get to the highway, and there's no bus route there anyway, but it's just there's no footpath to the main road. I'm just concerned as it is a busy lane. Thank you.
Councillor Buttle.
Hi. I'm not that great on this language. When Chris told us that the landscaping had changed and he showed us viewpoint 7, was that tree on the left in the picture something that had been removed, or is it something that they're working around?
Thank you, Councillor Buttle. Just to confirm, that tree was there when the officer visited the site on the 12th of May 2020, so we assume it's still there. And on the landscaping drawing, if I share my screen again, I'll just show you trees plotted on that western boundary, and you'll see that there's vegetation in that location. So the intention is to retain that vegetation, but ultimately landscaping is to be conditioned and agreed, but the intention is to retain those trees. They've just been thinned in that area. But I'll show you on the slideshow or the presentation. I'm just going to share my screen with you now. So if you just look at this plan, which is an outline, you can see the trees plotted along that western boundary there in green. So I've got the actual block plan here. And what it says is existing trees to be trimmed as required. I appreciate you can't really pick out the text on that plan. So the existing trees to be removed shown dashed. Now the ones dashed are the ones you see the faint outline in grey.
I do.
So the trees with the green canopies, they're the ones to be retained, the grey ones to be removed. But then there's a scheme. I mean, that's indicative. But I mean, ultimately the scheme of landscaping will set out all vegetation to remain on site.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think I understand exactly what you're saying. I was just concerned that they were having a garden and then which had a tree which they removed, and that's not going to be happening. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Slack, did you lose your?
I'm here. I'm back again.
Right, did you lose your video feed while we were discussing the item?
I did, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Well, I'll allow you to ask a question then.
Yeah.
But I'll have to take advice. But I'll have to take advice from Kerry whether you can vote on it because you weren't in.
I've been listening to you all the time. No problem in that way. Two questions. First of all, some residents have commented on the height of the houses, that 8.5 are the tallest houses in the area. That's one of my questions. The other question is, when you spoke with the developers, the planning office, did you discuss the solar panels, that it'd be a good idea on houses like this, that solar panels would be beneficial to them? Was that expressed to him, Chris?
Very good questions, Councillor Slack. On the first question, the height of the dwellings is a little, well, plots 1 and 2, you're looking at a height to ridge of approximately 8.5 metres.
That's right, yeah.
To less than that for plots 3 and 4. Now, if you remember from the elevation drawings, you've got little gablet details on the principal elevation of the house, and they actually serve as features that accommodate, the first floor windows. To eaves, these buildings, you're looking at 5 metres. So they're relatively modest for new houses, and I don't think they'll look out of scale when viewed in the context of the other houses that sit within close proximity to them. With regards to the second point, we have asked the applicant to address policy PD7 of the local plan. There was no condition, on the original hybrid application that they must introduce generation measures or other sustainable construction methods, or look at tackling or mitigating the effects of global warming. However, they've gone away, and you can't really see on the drawing, the block plan, but each house will have an air source heat pump. That's a sustainable form of heating. They'll be built to very high standards in terms of insulation. They do say in the report that the properties are orientated in a way that allows solar panels to be retrospectively installed if required, to help reduce the energy consumption of the houses. They've also said that the houses can support rainwater harvesting and collecting water for garden irrigation purposes, and they'll have low flush toilets. That's pretty standard, I think, for new houses. But I think with air source heat pumps and being built to high standards in terms of insulation, I think that goes far enough in terms of helping to address the impacts of climate change and mitigating global warming.
Thank you, Chris.
Right, I've got one last question. That's for questions. That's Councillor Bull.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, part of my question, obviously, about the eco and energy efficiency has helped, and I know you stated this was in 2017 and we haven't fully adopted our plan, but I really do think we have to adhere to that now, even though this might be reserved matters, but I think we should make an impression to say that we would require these, and it is nice to see that. But just one of the issues that about the vegetation being taken away, I think a lot of the vegetation was taken away on the very front, on the main 515, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know whether you've still got one, but if you could actually show a picture of what the site actually officially looked like before anything was moved, you can see it's a heck of a lot better, because there was all derelict tractors and units and things that was there. And to me, having edges and then putting fresh greenery in will look a heck of a lot better than what there is in there. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. But right now I'm going to move into debate. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm satisfied that the officer's recommendations have got it right. I think that a lot of work has been done on this. I'm also pleased to hear, Chris, about the green energy attributes to these properties. That's something as an authority, we're very keen on, so it's good to hear that. I'm satisfied that the other green agenda, the edge and so forth, are conditioned, and therefore I've got no hesitation to move officer's recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. Councillor Stuart Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second that. With regard to the questions regarding the heights, those that know the Sudbury area, the chimneys, I think, do the development justice, because most of the houses around that area have really tall chimneys, and I think it's a nice design. So I'll second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lees. Councillor Burthorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works because I'm not totally happy with this. I think these houses look very urban. In fact, the design of them could be anywhere in the country, and I think they're out of character with the surrounding area. No problem with the red brick for once. I don't think the development's in keeping with the area in terms of its scale. I think it's a classic example of overdevelopment of a restricted site in terms of density, and it goes against policy PD1 in my opinion. So I'm not going to put a recommendation forward of refusal, but because I've got a feeling that won't be seconded, but I shan't be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Burthorpe. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm a little bit disappointed that, the same as Councillor Purdy said at the first, that there's no affordable housing from this. Being 4 houses, it doesn't qualify now. It's unfortunate that the government, it used to be less than that previously, and the government made it to 10 houses out in rural parts, which is money we could have collected for affordable housing. So I'm disappointed with that, but that's how things are. I will be voting for it, but slight reservations of it could be a better design, but I suppose it's in keeping with the houses in the area, so I will be voting for it, Chair. Thank you.
Right. I've got nobody else on my list, so it's been moved and seconded for approval. So, Jackie, over to you.
Okay. Councillor Archer.
For.
Atkin.
For.
Bright.
For.
Bull.
For.
Burfoot.
Against.
Buttle.
Against.
Donnelly.
For.
Elliott.
For.
Fitzherbert.
For.
Lees.
For.
Hawley.
For.
Purdy.
For.
And Slack.
For.
That's 11 for, 2 against.
So that's been approved. Thank you very much, members. Moving swiftly on, item 4.3, application number 20/00387. It's a full application, land west of Spend Lane, Ashbourne. It's erection of dwelling, paragraph 79. We don't have many of these applications. 1 number barn, associated new access and landscape and enhancement. So I'll hand over to the officer for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see a shared screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll talk you through this one. We've got one representation that has come in late in the day from the applicant's agent. and they, in their representation, they're just raising some concern that we make sure we strike the right balance between the conditions and a proposed Section 106 agreement, but ultimately they're happy to discuss that with officers. The purpose from our perspective of the 106 agreement is to make sure that the benefits of the enhancement to biodiversity and the landscape by bringing the farmland under appropriate control are secured for a substantial period of time, and they aren't severed from the property. So we still feel there's a need for the 106, but we do feel that the management of the landscape and biodiversity can probably be secured through an appropriate condition. But with your agreement in due course, Chair, then we'd be happy to resolve that with the applicant after the committee meeting. So if I can just perhaps take you through the images of this, hopefully if it works. Okay, just get some annotation. Okay, if you can pick up on the image here, the site of this particular paragraph 79 dwelling lies the other side of the Tissington Trail. The Tissington Trail runs north-south, north of Ashbourne. You go under the Tissington Trail along Spend Lane and go into the site. At the moment, the point of access is a very sharp corner. You can only approach into the access coming north to south, and the application site is the fields here and stretching here. And if I go on to the next image, then you can pick up the application site. So you've got the red line, which is the site of the proposed house and the site of the proposed barn that's described in the application. And then within the blue line, you've got the associated agricultural land that is to be managed as part of this particular scheme. Just moving on through the images, I described to you the difficulty at the moment of the access onto Spend Lane. You can only drive up into the access into the field coming from the north to the south. The proposal is to create an appropriately suitable access for a road that's got a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit by introducing visibility splays in both directions, which will allow a vehicle to get in from both sides and create a safe access into the site. You can see here, this is an image of the body of the site. Within the report, we referred to fine Scots pine trees. Those are the trees. There's the remnants of a stone barn here, which is going to form the basis of part of the proposal, and also just to the south of the Scots pine tree, there's the remnant of a Dutch barn which was clad in metal, and this is the surrounding farmland that you can see. So quite an interesting proposal here in terms of what you're looking at. We have paragraph 79 house, which is only acceptable in policy terms if you consider it to be of outstanding quality and to contribute to the countryside. But you've got a building which combines a very modern component, a reinterpretation of a Dutch barn, done in sort of rusted steel work, and you've also got a stone building that sits behind it. There's a curtilage formed around this new property, and at the far end of the field, the property would have a new field barn to help them manage the 40 acres of land that go with the site. So that's an image of the building, generally respecting the characteristics of agricultural buildings in terms of the balance between solid walls and openings, albeit it's designed to function as a dwelling. See from this side, they incorporate the remnant of the stone wall into the project, and the building nestles on the junction between two fields. There will actually be a drainage ditch runs under the linking building. I'll show you that in due course. That's the view looking up the field from the east. And here's more architectural detail. So you've got the steelwork for the main Dutch barn. You've got gritstone slates to the roof. It's referred to gritstone walling in the architect's drawings. I'm not so sure. I think there might be limestone walling on the remaining wall of that, and if necessary we can address that through dealing with the conditions. And then we've got a zinc titanium link that runs between the two buildings. So this is looking at it from the south. So you see this single story building, which is a lot of the living space, and the link comes out on one end, the stone building and the steel building which sits behind. And that's looking at it from the east again. So you see that you've got this single story link that runs through the two buildings and creates all the connecting space. Again, that's from the north. Quite a striking design. You'll appreciate from this that this element of the building is the larger of the two. It's 2 stories. That accommodates the 3 bedrooms that are proposed, and the single story element contains a lot of the living space. So you'll see on this drawing again the 2-story rusted steel exterior of that, and then you've got the single story building. In this aligned, you've got the 2 prominent Scots pine trees sat to the west of that, and then you've got a line of the field boundary here, which is also the line of a ditch that runs through the land. So that will actually physically run underneath the link. And that image is an image of the field barn that we pointed out, which sits at the sort of high point of the site alongside hedgerow with hedgerow trees. And this is an architectural drawing of that field barn, which will be utilised to serve the rest of the holding, utilising common architectural language with the main dwelling, fairly modest in size, so machinery store, animal store and a sheepfold. Within the application, the applicant does refer to grazing rare breed sheep on the land. Sits in the corner of the field. So just get some, whilst I get these images up, I know something that members are very keen on is making sure that development accords with the objective of low energy buildings, although it's not really spelt out in the report. What we've got in this instance is a new building that, because it's super insulated, will only require something of the order of 30% of the energy input of a typical house. They've also going to introduce solar panels into the roof of the single story building, which faces south. Because of its position in an open field, it benefits from high levels of passive solar gain. The intention is to have a biomass boiler as well, where they will harvest wood from the extensive field boundary trees that they own. So this is one of those developments where we can confidently say that it, apart from travel to and from the site, it will be zero carbon in terms of its impact on the environment. And you'll note from the report that there are very substantial biodiversity benefits from the scheme in terms of fully reintroducing the hedgerows, reinstating ponds. There is a wildlife meadow to be created, improved public access in terms of the footpath links across the site. So generally speaking, a good environmental package all around. Just looking at these images, this is the access coming up into the site as it comes up the hill from Spend Lane. You get a sense of the open aspect. This is looking from the site out across the land to the southeast. This is the remnant of the stone barn here. As I mentioned earlier, I think that's probably limestone with a dressed gritstone coin to it, but it's a detail we can work up with the applicants. Again, another view of that. So the single story building comes to the east of that in terms of where it sits, and the two-storey steel coated building sits alongside with the link in between. Views of the open field. I think that's it for now, Chair. Happy to take member questions.
Right, thank you. What I'll just point out is there is some late reps on it, so I take it other people have read it. The officer's comments are that members are requested to delegate authority to John, the development manager, to grant any issue of approval and agree the wording of conditions in any section 106. So just bear that in mind. So anyway, first to speak on my list is Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, before I ask the question, I'm very pleased that there's an element of renewable energy in this application, so that's very good. But looking at the barn, in time, will they have the right to turn this barn into a dwelling, John? Being it's a barn, will that be permitted development to turn this into a dwelling in future?
I think that's an imponderable, Councillor Slack, in terms of where the planning legislation lies at any moment in time. I mean, it used to be that all barn conversions required planning permission. Now, of course, there's an extensive prior approval regime that allows that. They tend to be associated with a time span. So a barn has to have been there for a considerable period of time before it qualifies to be converted. I would hope that in this particular instance, it's a relatively modest barn. It'll be tied into the existing land holding, and we'll try and tie it down so it can't be sold off separately. I would hope that there isn't any temptation or desire to convert that into a second dwelling.
Thank you, John.
Councillor Buttle.
Hi there. Hi there. I've been and had a look at this site. It was absolutely fantastic. A fantastic place, and I've had a look at the design. I think it's great. I'm really very, very much in favour. The only thing that's caught my eye was the use of Tesla tiles. I don't know how efficient they are, but if we have enough Tesla tiles, let's say 3 or 5 kilowatts, that would be enough to actually power a couple of electric cars. And then we could be completely sustainable. And I would be even more in favour then. That would be just, you know, like, so assuming we've got enough tiles, yeah, it would be just fantastic. I'm a massive favour of this one. It's really good. So there we go. I'll be voting for it.
Just to clarify on that point, Councillor Butler, yeah, I think it is the applicant's intention that there's battery storage on site and facilities for electric vehicle charging. So that ties in with their intentions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fitzherbert.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've also had the benefit of looking at this on site. It's in my ward, of course. I just, one point of clarification, of course, a site visit would have made this, I know it's impossible at the moment, that was a wonderful presentation, because just reading the papers and looking at the plans, you don't get a feel for the place. My only question is, in the hatching on our papers, is it a track between the stone barn that goes east-west and then south to the, is that a track, or I'm not quite sure what that is, then leads down to the sheep barn?
Yes, there's a main access to the property and then a driveway. I'm assuming it could be relatively modest in terms of its design specifications, would run from east to west up the field and then break across the ditch higher up to come across to the field barn.
Any supplementary, Councillor Fitzherbert? Are you happy with that?
No, I'm happy with that. I just wanted a clarification on that, and I'm happy to speak.
Thank you.
Later.
Councillor Pawley.
Yes, thank you. I've just got a few questions. The first one is, as this is being built in the countryside, can I just be reminded of what the conditions are about who can buy it and who can live in it? Is it just people who've lived in the Derbyshire Dales for quite a while or who work here, or is it anybody can buy this? That's the first one. The second one is, historically, are there barns, Dutch barns around here? Is this something completely new, or is it something that replicates what we've had in the past? And the third one is looking at the small windows in the Dutch barn. Are you happy that there's going to be enough interior light for the people that are using it?
Okay, try and take those in the order that that you've raised them. In terms of who can live there, this is a entirely private sector proposition. So there won't be a restriction in terms of any local clause as to who can occupy the unit. The intention through the Section 106 agreement is to prevent severance of the land from the project, so that the environmental benefits that have been offered up are secured long term. In terms of Dutch barns in the landscape, they're not a prevailing form of agricultural enclosure, but if you drive around the south of the district, you will find Dutch barns. And I think the key thing here is there is evidence of a Dutch barn having sat on this site historically. So they're trying to draw on that history of the particular site. And so if we had the benefit of a site visit today, you would see some remaining ironwork, the collapsed roof of the Dutch barn, which sits on the ground. In terms of the amount of light getting into the units, I think it's quite skillfully designed as a property. So a lot of the living space is in that linking corridor and in the single story element, where the steel clad barn lies. A lot of that accommodation is bedroom accommodation. So we feel that there's an adequate amount of light. It does have the benefit as a site as being really quite open, so it will get light all of the day round, and we think that's suitable.
Okay. So the last one.
Can I just do one follow up?
Yes. Yeah.
I do know that these things exist where you can take a steel something down from the roof and into separate rooms. I was just wondering if they'd considered that to enhance the lighting in that area.
Yeah. In terms of a light pipe or something, yeah. I mean that would be possible if they find that they need to suggest very minor modifications to the scheme. That would be something if the scheme gets support tonight that we could probably deal with during the discharge of the conditions on the scheme.
Okay, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you said and John said, we don't get many of these Section 79s. I can't remember when the last one was, John. Going to design it, I mean, it's very subjective, isn't it? As we saw with the last application, Councillor Barefoot was on her own with her view on the design of those houses, which I admit they're pretty standard stock. But when I first saw the first image of this barn, John, my initial reaction was, it's a bit like an overblown Nissan hut. But when you look at it, though, and in context with the other buildings and the juxtaposition of it, it really does sit well and it does present well. My question is, who sits on the panel of this design panel? I know there's reference to the county council, but is there a team that makes judgment on this? Because I come back to my initial comment. Design is very subjective and it will please the eye of some and not others. So how do we arrive at it being justified as a Section 79 qualification? I mean, I'm happy to move this, Chair. I think it's excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it's twofold in this particular instance. Government guidance. There's a paragraph within the PPG which encourages local authorities to make use of design panels. Now, historically, they would have been funded by local authorities. Some of the original ones open in the East Midlands had an element of direct funding from government to support local authorities. That still exists, but increasingly these design panels have changed slightly, where they are entirely independent from applicants, but they are a collection of architects, landscape professionals, building design technologists, and the likes, who will provide independent advice to potential planning applicants and advise them as to whether the design they're proposing and the whole package that they propose in terms of how it sits in the landscape is sufficient to meet the requirements of a paragraph 79 house. it's a slightly strange situation, but I think we have to take that advice on face value. So the applicant in this particular case has gone through a design panel on 2 occasions to try and develop their design. What's reassuring also is that the county council's urban designer has looked at this and does agree with their conclusions on that this is a very fine piece of design in its context. You know, it's not overblown, it's not a monumental stately home or anything, it's just a really good piece of design that sits very well in the landscape and has the package of other benefits that meet the requirements of government policy.
Thank you, John.
Councillor Burfield.
Well, I'm happy to second this. My first reaction when looking at this was that it's exciting, and as John said, it's a striking design, and it's good to see something different being proposed. I think the architects need to be congratulated on this, and so I'm more than happy to second it. It's certainly not what I call a Stepford Wives design. It's something different, and I'm more than happy to second it.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Burfoot. Councillor Fitzherbert.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm very happy with this. As you know, over the past few years, I've been looking to promote the reuse of all these disused barns all over our area and in the areas that is in the national park in the Derbyshire Dales as well. So I'm very happy to back this as well. And I'd just like to say to Councillor Pauly, I can show you lots of Dutch barns near me within 10 minutes walk when you're next down here, if you'd like to come and see a few.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Tom Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to second the application. I think, knowing the area very well, you know, it's I think it's so well planned and it is sort of isolated at the same time. I think it is really an excellent application. I think we're going to enhance that area of Spen Lane, and I'm more than happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donny. Councillor Lees, and then we'll move into the debate.
Yes, likewise, I'm quite happy to support this. And if you anybody that does travel around the South Staffs area up on the moorlands, Staffordshire moorlands, there's quite a few of these developments out and about around the countryside, around that area, and they do fit in well with the surrounding area. So I'm happy to support.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. So we're moving to debate. I've got nobody down on my list. It's been moved and seconded for approval. So Jackie, over to you for the vote.
Excuse me. Councillor Archer.
For.
Atkin.
For.
Bright.
For.
Bull.
For.
Burfoot.
For.
Battle.
For.
Donnelly.
For.
Elliott.
For.
Fitzherbert.
For.
Lees.
For.
Pauly.
For.
Purdy.
For.
And Slack.
For.
Unanimous.
That's unanimous. So that's been passed for approval. So moving swiftly on again, item 4.4, application number 20/004294, which is Birch House Farm, Derby Lane, Edmiston. This is retention of additional fishing lake. So what I'll do is I'll take it over to the officer now, and I think John, you're doing this one again.
I am. Sure. Hopefully, I am sharing a screen with you as we.
You are, John.
Speak. Wait a second. Something to help me annotate. Okay. I think we're up and going. Members with an eagle eye might have noticed that on the enforcement report that follows the planning applications on this agenda, we had an enforcement issue of a retrospective fishing lake that had been created first, permission not secured. So that's what we're looking at tonight. We've had the application submitted, and members that know this particular area will know that we have a number of fishing lakes on this particular site as you come in from the main Brailsford to Ashbourne Road. It's a well-used facility with fishing lakes of different sizes. So within the hatch line, we've got the access down to the new fishing lake, And the new fishing lake sits right on the southern tip of this particular site. And you'll see that with fishing lakes either side of Brailsford Brook at this particular let's turned it through 90 degrees, but you can see the fishing lake there, sat immediately to the south of the existing facility. Fairly standard design for a fishing lake. They tend to be relatively shallow and incorporate either islands just underneath the water or ones take out. There are sections of the fishing lake there which demonstrate the varied depth of it. And just through some sort of slides of the site, this is the access into the whole facility. So it's got an existing point of access with adequate parking. There's a picture of the lake as we look across it, looking to the southeast. One's looking across it, I think is looking to the east at that point. Sits within the landscape quite well. There hasn't have to be any great build-up of embankments to create this particular facility. That's looking back towards the parking area from across the lakes, and you can see that they assimilate quite well within the landscape as a group of fishing lakes. That's just looking at an area of parking. So that's probably it, Chair. I'll stop sharing and take any questions.
Right, members, open to you. Councillor Pawley.
Yeah, only one question is why on the consultation have we not got a response, or did we not even ask, and why didn't we, at the flood team at County Council, because it involves water? Just interested to know why that's not necessary, that's all.
Yeah, I don't think it fits with their criteria for consultation. I'd need to cross-check that, but they tend to be more interested in residential and industrial development. I mean, the reality of this as a facility is clearly that it's only right, it has the potential to retain water, so it won't be a particular flood risk in itself.
Okay. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Part of my question has been answered. I was going to ask a similar question to Councillor Pawley. So I will come back in again in comments. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I've got nobody down for questions, so we'll move into debate. Councillor Slack.
Yeah, I think it's in this time when many sports have been curtailed by the virus. I think fish is one of the few sports where people can social distance, and I'm fully supportive of this application. It's a sport where people can get out in the countryside, have a day's fishing. I'm not a fisherman myself, but I know many people enjoy fishing, and I'm fully supportive of this application, Chair, and I'd like to move it.
You're going to move it. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Slack. Councillor Bull.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Although, yeah, maybe me, the eagle eye, is picking it up. I disappointed in some aspects to find it with having these done as retrospective. But other than that, it does fit in well with the landscape, and it is a hobby that quite a heck of a lot of people do enjoy. So I would prepare to second it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bull. Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, Chair, I was going to second it, but I'm quite happy to support it.
Right, thank you. I've got nobody else down on my list, so it's been moved and seconded for approval, subject to conditions. Jackie, if you'd like to take the vote.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Atkin.
For.
Bright.
For.
Bull.
For.
Burfoot.
For.
Buttle.
For.
Donnelly,
Or
Elliott,
Or
Fitzherbert,
Or
Lees,
Or
Crawley,
Or
Purdy,
Four.
and Slack.
4.
That's unanimous.
it's unanimous. That's been passed. So moving swiftly on, item 5, information on active and closed enforcement investigations. John or Chris, is there anything you want to add or say?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair.
Chair,
Right,
can I ask a question on that for John, please?
of course you can.
John, given the effects of COVID, how has the enforcement team been able to react? Obviously, I'm sure members like me noticed there's a lot of items that have been long-standing on these papers, particularly my ward, Masson. It's been lots of issues going on for some time. So just an up-to-date speed with that, please.
Yeah, I think by and large we've managed to maintain the enforcement service. The 2 officers that make the site visits have been coming into work and visiting sites, and the planning officers and myself and Chris, who have a strong input into enforcement as well, have been very conscious of the need to keep the service moving forward, because during COVID, you'd not be surprised to find that 1 or 2 people do take advantage of what they feel is probably a lower level of sort of public scrutiny of what they're up to. And likewise, people confined to home or their immediate area are maybe spotting things that hadn't been previously spotted that are breaches of planning control. We're conscious that there are a few old cases on this list. I think 1 or 2 of those need to come off the list. They need updating and taking off, to be honest with you. But I think we are making steady progress over time in reducing the outstanding list of enforcement cases.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. So it's just for noting. So I'll move it for noting. Second, Councillor Donnelly. All those in favour, please show. Item 6, appeals progress report. John, Chris, anything to add to this?
Nothing to add, Chair. They're self-explanatory, the decisions that we've had recently. Thank you.
So that's for noting again. I therefore move. Councillor Donny, second again. All those in favour, please show. Anyway, just the last piece of business we have now. I don't know whether any of you are aware, but this is actually Jackie, our committee clerk's last planning committee. So on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank Jackie for all the work she's done for this committee and servicing this committee, and all the work she's done for Derbyshire District Council. So if you'd like to put your hands together and give her a bit of a clap, that'd be nice. And good luck on your retirement, Jackie. There is just Councillor Buttle wants to, I don't know whether Councillor Buttle wants to add anything.
I was just, does the planning committee have an issue on this planning changes consultation that's being put forward by the government? Will we be providing any sort of feedback to them?
Chair, if I can help there,
yeah,
I can help.
yeah.
Well, the white paper's only just come out, Councillor Buttle. It landed on my desk and Paul's desk a couple of days ago. Yes, there will be a need for consultation with all of the authorities throughout the whole of the land. I've already been on one MHCLG webinar. There are 2 more planned. So it's some quite wide-ranging sweeping reform. I've had conversations with John Bradbury about this. So yes, there will be need to discuss and you know, look into it further.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's the end of the planning committee, and I will see you all tomorrow for the council meeting. So thank you very much for bearing with us, and enjoy the rest of this hot, sticky evening. Okay.
Thanks. Good night. Good night, everybody.
Cheers. Good night. Thank you. Bye.